Good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public. Welcome to this evening's North Area Planning Committee. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and I welcome viewers joining us online. I'll just run through some housekeeping rules before we start. Can I request that mobile phones are either switched to silent or switched off for the duration of the meeting? I'll also run through the procedure for member and public participation and the rules of debate. Please note that the Chair's ruling during the debate will be final. If you have registered to speak, I will introduce you by name and invite you to address the meeting at the appropriate time. The Development Management Officer will introduce the item relating to the planning application and summarise the main points. When this has been completed, I will then invite members of the public who have registered to speak on the item to address the meeting. Members of the committee will then be given the opportunity to ask for clarification from speakers, and the item will then be moved and seconded and debated before a vote is taken. So the first item on the agenda is apologies.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Brown and Councillor Jelly.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, Members' Declaration of Interests. Councillor Shatlock.
Yeah, for the application for Manor Barn, Main Street, Polbrook, just to clarify, I'm a very close personal friend of Ian Simmons, who is representing the applicant, and also his architect is an architect we will be using when we put in a planning application, which will come to this committee. So I'll leave the room.
Thank you. And then we'll call you back after the... thank you. I must admit, I don't think this is an interest, but I do recognise one of the speakers. It's not somebody I know well, but I just recognise them. So, members will note there are no minutes on the agenda, but that we'll have 2 sets of minutes coming to the next meeting, planning meeting, so we'll be able to approve them then. So that takes us on to the first planning application, which is NE/24/00121/outline Manor Barn, Main Street in Polbrook. And Chris Hill, you're introducing this. Thank you.
There we go. That's fine. Good evening, councillors. Planning application NE/24/00121 out is a planning application adjacent to Manor Barn, Main Street within the settlement of Polbrook. It's an outline planning application with all matters reserved apart from access. I'll very briefly summarise some of the key pertinent points and some of the constraints. It is settled within what is the historical settlement of Polsbrook. Access to the actual site is achieved off of Main Street via a pseudo-junction type arrangement. The whole of the site sits within a group tree preservation order, TPO 0085, with Manor House located to the left of it. The entirety of the site is within Flood Zone 1. It is not sat within any designated ecology sites. It is not within a conservation area and sits outside the 3 kilometre zone of influence of the SPA. The application, as mentioned, is outlined except for access, so therefore we're looking at the principle of development with layout, scale, appearance in landscaping and other aspects for later determination. Plans submitted, therefore, are illustrative only. The dwelling proposed as shown, illustratively only to clarify again, is to be detached, likely to be 3 or more bedrooms, and is specified within the design and access statement of being 170 square metres, and is also to include a detached garage. As mentioned, it will be accessed via Manor Barn driveway off of Main Street. In terms of the principle of development, it is considered, I'll just skip to the plans actually, whilst I was talking, if the technology will permit me. There we go. In terms of principle of development, JCS Policy 11 and LPP2 Policy EN2 both specify where it's within the settlement boundary, adjacent to the highway, and bound on 2 sides by existing development is classified as infill development, which is permissible, and therefore the principle of development is acceptable under those 2 policy documents. Turning to design and appearance, etc. Is not for determination as mentioned, but the intention is to deliver a 1-storey/1.5-storey dwelling with a semi-rustic appearance. Previously withdrawn's application illustrated that the dwelling itself would mimicry the materials of the adjacent manor barn itself in terms of its stonework and its tiling. Site levels, final appearance, scale, landscaping, etc. would all be conditioned as part of the application. In terms of amenity, the dwelling, as mentioned, is detached. The wall to the northeast, which I will flick to a picture of, hopefully. It's a little bit further on in this one. That's the wall in question. Sits to the north of the site and therefore with some 20 metres to the next closest dwelling. So in terms of amenity impacts to neighbours, there are none that are identified. The site, as mentioned, is within a tree preservation order area. A tree survey and arboricultural reports were submitted for assessment. We did not have tree officer comments on this application. However, we had tree officer comments on the previous application, and they were content with the actual scheme as a whole. The garage itself is the pertinent element of it, because it will require the removal of a total of 3 trees of low quality, young to medium in age, none of which are highlighted within the tree preservation order itself. Some small-scale tying back or pruning of a singular tree would also potentially be necessitated due to the garage location, but this would be supervised by a specialist. In total, there would be very minimal harm to the tree preservation order area. In terms of highways, the proposed access is off of the main street, as mentioned. If I flick back to a picture here, and I should have included a picture as from the chairman briefing earlier. There is kind of a pseudo-junction type arrangement in front of it, and if and when we get onto that conversation, I'm happy to bring up an image of it. But that is the pinch point of the highways access, and that's a 4.05 metre width access, which does not accord with the local highway standards. However, as mentioned, it's served by a kind of 2-point junction access that has some considerable approach. So therefore, there's space and area for more than 2 vehicles to potentially stop and leave as they access the point. Another point of consideration, which was raised by residents, is the number of dwellings that are accessed off of the actual driveway. There is quite some disagreement as presently 4 or presently 5 dwellings. So the additional dwelling would result in either a total of 5 or a total of 6 dwellings. The council's position is that in terms of formally registered addresses, we have a total of 4. If we accept the argument that there is a total of 5, there is consideration as to whether the additional dwelling would result in an unsafe or unsuitable highways arrangement by having 6 dwellings access off a single drive. Due to the nature of the access in terms of the junctioned access, the safe approach and the reasonably widthed pinch points, as well as the actual the distance you can see down the driveway in either direction, it's considered that this wouldn't result in an unsafe or an unsuitable highways arrangement and doesn't meet the test of the NPPF in terms of refusing potentially unsafe highways arrangements. In terms of parking, there's more than a significant amount of parking space, as well as the garage itself, which is being delivered, so there's no concerns with that, even were it to be a 4+ bedroom house. And then briefly touching on ecology, it was submitted with a preliminary ecological assessment, which was determined by the NNC ecology officer and the nature space officer that there were no identified or unacceptable potential harms to protected species, and the recommended conditions include a schedule of biodiversity enhancements in the form of bat boxes, bird boxes and hedgehog boxes. Finally, the application site is entirely within flood zone 1, but the lead local flood authority were consulted. They suggested that the scale of the application did not warrant concern. However, I also understand that there are concerns regarding the degree of drainage to be found on the highway adjacent to the site. In that instance, the previous submission included a sustainable drainage permeability plan. That particular plan is not included in this application because, of course, the layout in this application is not fixed, but there is a condition requiring the submission of a similar plan at the reserved matters stage. The LFA, as I said, declined to comment any further, and therefore it is considered, given that it is in flood zone 1, that this is an acceptable arrangement. And I believe that concludes the pertinent matters. Yeah. Questions?
Thank you. Thank you. So we have 2 registered speakers on this application, and each speaker has 3 minutes. The first speaker is Lloyd Martin, third-party objector. When you're ready, if you'd like to come and sit up at the table and... And when you're ready, if you'd like to start. Can you remember to press the microphone? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Lloyd Martin. I'm a neighbour. I live at Long Acre. Can I first draw your attention to the fact that the applicant is Mrs. Simmons and she's sadly deceased. She passed away on the 18th of March. I don't know whether that represents a material change to this application. This application contains a number of inaccuracies and errors which I think might mislead the committee. I shall cite only new ones which appear in agenda item 3.1, and I'll focus on access because access worries me. The consultation section, errors. 5.3, the highway's requirement of a visibility splay of 2 metres by 43 metres is not met. Facing east at the highway, there are only 15 metres from the eastern exit and 24 metres from the western one, not 43 metres. I shall leave you photographic proof. The access width, as was said, is only 4.05 metres. It should be 5.5. Now, I have proposed in earlier communications to you better, safer access solutions with far better visibility splays. This seems to have been ignored. Evaluation, 7.3, impact on neighbours. Restrictive covenants were put into place when this land was sold to the late Mr. and Mrs. Simmons. These restrict the site to being only garden land. I shall take legal action were there to be any breach of these covenants. Evaluation access errors, 755, quotes, the submitted details specify that the main street is a 20-mile-an-hour road. This is wrong. It is 30. 757 ignores the highway requirements stated above and goes on to state, and I quote, the access has strong visibility. This is not correct. 746, driveway access. The evaluation refers to a no-dig driveway. Now, I can find no reference to this in any application document. Other errors in the evaluation. 746 states the arboricultural details, quote, demonstrate the protection of the existing TPO. In the actual application, there is no reference whatsoever to the existence of a TPO. 763 states that the applicant had been refused access to surveying nearby ponds. Now, this is not true, because I, for one, was never asked. It goes on to state that the applicant, quote, noted 4 large ponds were 450 metres or more from the site. This is factually incorrect. The largest pond is 150 metres away. So in summary, I maintain the Planning Committee needs to be aware that this application is, in my opinion, peppered with inaccuracies and errors, and I urge the committee to reject this application as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have, would you mind just sitting there a little bit longer, just in case members have any questions of clarification?
I will be also very pleased. I realise it's rushed. I have a copy, transcript of what I've said. I will pass it to you in a minute.
Thank you. Councillor Best.
Yeah, thanks. You talk about the access not being safe or not being ideal, I think. Can you confirm, is that not though the access that you would currently use from your house onto that road?
Yes, it's the access that everybody uses already, but that doesn't mean that you should perpetuate a potential problem. Now, when I leave my house every day, I do not use the, on the left-hand diagram there. In order to turn right, you must be in the left-hand side. You use it like a roundabout. But even that, when you're standing there, is only 24 metres visibility splay looking to the east. So all I'm saying is it doesn't comply with the highway requirements. That's all I'm saying. It's not a safe junction. I mean, I live there, but there are quite enough. And I know there have been no accidents. I've read that. Doesn't mean there haven't been some near misses.
Thank you.
Other members? No, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I would just like, if I may, to leave this with you.
Yes, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Great, thank you. Yeah. Sorry, just to let you know, we can't accept additional material, so I'm happy with what you've just read out, but we can't accept the photos. Thank you. Sorry, then we have Ian Simmons, agent on behalf of the applicant. Again, you have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. Well, I think Chris covered everything that I was pretty much going to say, so I'll just respond to a couple of the things Lloyd said. In 1981, the owners of Manor Farm House got permission to develop their farm buildings, which became Manor Barn, my parents' house, and at the same time, permission for a new building on the adjoining land, which is the plot we're discussing this evening. I don't know where Lloyd gets it from that this was only to be garden land. It had outline planning already on it for a dwelling. My parents just didn't exercise that because they didn't need it. It's only come to pass, in fact, this week that they still have that planning dated in 1981, and because they started the work by virtue of renovating Manor Barn, which was on the same application, they actually already have outline planning consent, but we just didn't know it. Reference the driveway. Yes, the picture on the left sort of tells the story of what it is. It's used as a roundabout. It's used by the 4 houses that actually exist there: Manor Barn, Woodland House, Manor Farm House and Longacre. And of course everyone now on the parish side of things is trying to ramp that up to 5 using an Airbnb business that's operating out of a former garage. And as far as the parish council are concerned and mentioned at their own meeting, there has been no application concerning the use of this into a holiday let. So we're still waiting for something about that. But more importantly on this picture here, the tarmac area that leads down to the road has now been adopted by Highways. So to my understanding from what I was told by them, the actual pinch point on the right-hand one is the first exit from the highway. The highway down to where the tree is and where you pull onto the road, that entire circle is owned by the Highways. So the actual entrance to the highway is where the gravel ends and the tarmac starts, not where the 43-metre bit would be, as per Lloyd. That's it, really, because I think everything else, you know, between conservation, ecology and everything else has been covered at length, and the fact that the parish council and neighbours just wish to keep saying, well, we don't believe that and we'd like to hear a bit more, has just kept pushing this down the road, which is why my mother never actually got to see this to conclusion, passing away 2 months ago with her time wasted by the parish council and her ne'er-do-well neighbours. That's all I've got for you.
Thank you, and I'm sorry to hear about your
Thank
mother.
you very much.
Before you go, do any members want to ask any questions of clarification? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know the first speaker spoke of restrictive covenants, and I just want to ask the legal officer if she can speak to us about that in relation to planning. Thank you.
Happy to clarify that a restrictive covenant, whether one exists or not, is a private legal matter. It's not a material planning consideration.
Thank you. So that takes us to the application NE/24/00121/outline. For the purposes of debate and in accordance with the Council's Constitution Rules 19.2 and 19.21, I'll move the recommendation stated on page 5 of the agenda papers, which is that planning permission be granted subject to conditions listed at paragraph 11 of the report by the planning committee. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. So I know there were a lot of issues highlighted on this, and one of them was to do, seeing as we're particularly talking about highways and the access today, 7.5.5 says that submitted details specify that Main Street is a 20-mile-per-hour road. It was said that it was a 30-mile-per-hour road. Highways haven't made any objections, so is that something we need to consider further?
I suppose the only question for the committee would be whether the arrangement would be seen as any less safe were a 20-mile-an-hour, 30-mile-an-hour road. I was under the impression it was a 20-mile-an-hour road, but I may be incorrect, and local residents may have more ground knowledge in that regard.
Thank you. Did you want to make any comment on any of that? Do I have any speakers on this, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's a couple of things, please. One, there's no clarity in the report about how many properties is serviced here. You make mention of that. I think that's really important, and I think we need that clarified. Also, you asked a question just now of whether we would deem the difference in speed an issue. I certainly would. I think it's important, but I think we need to be having correct information on the speed of that road so they can be assessed properly by highways. Also, the overall expiry date advises 8th of April on this. What's the agreed extension time? Because it's not noted.
There was a question just because of the scheme of delegation in terms of getting this to committee. There were some quandaries with the actual, the way in which the scheme of delegation has to be progressed in terms of the planning manager referring it, etc. So just because of time, there wasn't an agreed extension of time in place. Pending the outcome of the committee, we would agree an extension of time to issue a decision.
Thank you. And I think I've just asked if we can look at Street View to look at the this speed. Sorry. I think one of the legal. Thank you. So there's three things you mentioned. The speed limit and the extension date, if there's an extension date, and how many houses it's serving. Yeah, I think the houses we have to look at whether we would be satisfied. Regard, whether it moves from 5 to 6 or as the council has 4 to 5. So if we were happy with 6 of that. I do know the entrance onto there and the road along there. Sorry, Councillor Dial.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a question really for the officers. The planning application is in the name of Mrs. Simmons, who has sadly passed on. Does that make a difference tonight? Does the planning application not lapse because of that, or does it pass on to a family member?
Might be a better question for legal, potentially.
I'm sorry, can I just clarify? Has the applicant passed away?
Yes.
I'm actually not sure, to be perfectly honest.
I could be incorrect. I believe the permission would go with the land in that instance.
Well, no, but the permission would, but I mean, what happens to the application where the applicant
I think it
passes
defaults to
away?
the agent, much in the same way a certificate of ownership
so
can be
they have
declared by an agent.
There is an agent?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, an application for planning permission relates to the land, so you don't even have to be an owner of the land to make an application for planning permission. Sorry, I misunderstood there's an agent acting, so it doesn't have any impact in terms of determining the application.
Any further comment? Sorry. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're just looking on there to confirm as well from officers. We found it. Thank you. Yeah. While we're waiting for officer confirmation on that speed limit, which I would like to do, are there any other comments from members? No, this is obviously just for access, and reserved matters will come back to this committee if planning permission is granted. Did you? I've just been advised, actually, we don't know how updated, how up-to-date Google Maps is. So I think as a committee, we need to assume, and we have been told by both speakers that the speed limit is 30 miles per hour, and base the planning application, determine the planning application on those, that detail, that it is 30 mile per hour road. Councillor Marks?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There may be several clerical errors in the papers. What the committee has to decide is whether or not they're material planning considerations. So, for example, there could be a semicolon rather than a colon. There could be all sorts of errors. But the only thing for us to decide is whether it's material planning consideration.
Thank you. Did you have a photo of the access from the main road into that you could put up into? Yeah, but yeah, I'm sure that hasn't changed much. Thank you.
So just to briefly describe there as well, on the left there is the entrance. So where we've been looking at that picture of the vis-a-vis two different directions, and that's as you approach. And unfortunately, as close as I can get on Google Maps, but it gives you an idea of exactly what that looks like.
So just past that grass area, that's still highways on the left, but it's only access to those dwellings. But there are a number of conditions that cover some of the concerns. So, if there are no further comments from members, we've got a proposer, a seconder, to grant the application subject to those conditions. And remember, this is outline planning permission, so all reserved matters will come back to this committee to determine. So can we go to the vote then? Can you make that clear? Can all those in favour? Is that any against? Thank you. So that's carried. Thank you very much. Would you mind somebody popping out and... Thank you. So we're all back, so that's good. Thank you. So that takes us on to the second application this evening, which is NE/24/00352 LDP. That's and Erica, thank you for taking that. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This application is for a certificate of lawfulness for a proposed single-storey rear extension. My recommendation is that the Planning Committee issues the certificate of lawful development. So this application is being presented to committee in accordance with the Council's scheme of delegation, as delegated authority should not be exercised for applications submitted by a current officer at or above Tier 4 level. The officer submitting the application is acting as the agent for the applicant. In this case, the applicant is the housing association constructing the extension for a disabled child. For certificate of lawfulness, we assess the proposal against the relevant part of the GDPO. In this case, I've assessed the proposal against Schedule 2, Part 1, Class A, and I found that the proposal complies with all the legislative provisions against which are relevant to this extension. The extension is only 2 meters deep and 2.8 meters high, which falls within the permitted development dimensions. As I said before, this application is only being presented because the agent is one of our one of the council's employees.
Thank you. I did ask this morning why we've got this in front of us with the certificate of lawfulness, but really it's just a comfort blanket. This would be allowed under permitted development, this application.
Yeah, under normal circumstances, I would have just proceeded to issue the certificate of lawfulness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So NE/24/00352 LDP for the purposes of debate and in accordance with the Council's Constitution Rules 19.2 and 19.21, I'll move the recommendation stated on page 29 of your agenda papers that the lawful development certificate is issued. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from members? Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just wanting to, I couldn't hear what you said there at the end. Did you say it was a council employee and that's the reason why it's come to council?
Yes, she's acting as the agent for the applicant.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And there's been no objections to this?
No, for these type of applications, we don't do consultations. Okay. We only assess the proposal against the GDPO. Right.
Thank you. So if there are no questions or comments from members, we'll go to the vote. We've got a proposer and we've got a seconder. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Please feel free to So that takes us on to the last item on our agenda, NC/24/00130/DPA. And Fernando, you're taking this. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. This is a planning application for a beacon in Coronation Park for various ceremonies throughout the year. Just quickly run through this. The yellow dot, just below the yellow dot is where Coronation Park is in relation to Corby Town Centre, which is to the south, just like 2 or 3 minute walk. This is like an aerial image of Coronation Park, just to show you the sort of trees and layout that's within the park itself. This particular slide shows the location of the beacon with the dot, which is just south, just north of the bandstand area, which is laid out to like a wooden decking. So this gentleman standing in the picture is the showing indicative location at the time of application for the beacon. This is what they applied for, and a subsequent site visit today shows the location of the beacon in situ. There it is, where the cursor is.
Chair. Sorry to interrupt. Just a point of order, really. We're both town councillors, and we didn't think we should have declared an interest at the beginning of this. Sorry, we were both half asleep. So
that's all right.
Is it okay if we sort of leave the room now and let you carry on with the application?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy. That's okay. Thank you for highlighting that. Thank you if you'd like to carry on.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
The beacon is, as you see there, which is a recycled telegraph pole with a steel cage on top for possibly putting a bale of hay in there and lighting it. To conclude, there are no issues. Just refer members to the update sheet. The local highway authority has no comment, and the police crime prevention officer says they have no comment as well. So there's been no adverse reaction to the proposal. So the recommendation, which is slightly modified in light of the fact that it's now in situ, is that retrospective planning permission be granted subject to the varied condition below. So in the committee report, condition 1 in the recommendation gets deleted and condition 2 becomes condition 1. So that's the variation I would like members to consider. Thank you. And I'll stop talking now. Thank you.
Thank you. So, therefore, the recommendation will change slightly, and going back to NC/24/00130/DPA for the purposes of debate in accordance with the Council's Constitution Rules 19.2 and 19.21. I'll move the recommendation stated on page 37 of your agenda papers that retrospective planning permission be granted subject to the condition in point 2 listed in para 11 of the report. So I have a seconder. Thank you. So, as been stated, condition 2 will become addition 1. I did note, and it's something I did ask, that the fire protection officer had no issues regarding the beacon. So, are there any comments or questions? Councillor Deering.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's really just a comment from my point of view. I'm absolutely not a fan of retrospective applications whatsoever. However, it's not a house, it's not a building. What it is and where it is, I'm quite happy with.
Thank you. No, I agree. It was coming so that it's ready for tomorrow, and we had, well, I had assumed it would be, if planning permission were granted, erected tomorrow. So we are where we are, and we're now the application is now for retrospective planning permission. But we have a proposer, we have a seconder. If there are no comments, all those in favour? Thank you. And I hope the commemoration events tomorrow go well. Would somebody bring the other two, before we close the meeting, the other two members in? Where you'd gone. Thank you. Thank you, Callum. There are no urgent items of business, and therefore I close the meeting at 19:37. Thank you for attending.